Welcome back for match 2 of the special Capcom Classic Tournament. This is match 3 for round 1, where I look in total off and on until we get a winner of the best Capcom game. Now, this is both all-time classics as well as modern classics. As we saw with round 1, where we had Mall vs. Capcom 2 versus Street Fighter 3 Third Strike go at it. Look at overall impact in gaming pop culture, if you will, as well as other elements. And when it's all said and done, keep in mind that also I give my own personal perspective, but at the end of the day, what really matters is the overall impact the game had. Last time we looked at Resident Evil 7 versus Resident Evil 4. This time we have definitely two all-time 2D classics from Capcom. Both had their own interesting impacts on fighting games as a whole in the 2D genre. First up, we have, of course, arguably for many years, my personal favorite for a very long time, a personal favorite Street Fighter game. We have, of course, released original version exclusively on the Super Nintendo, and that is Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And then we have, of course, a game that needs no true introduction, at least for me, and that is Vampire Savior, better known here in the West as, of course, Darkstalkers 3. So, with that said, looking onwards at many perspectives on different things with the games as a whole. First thing, mention which game overall made a bigger impact? Hard to say. With Street Fighter 2 Turbo would be really the introduction of a turbo mode to make the gameplay much more fast, which makes it feel more like games today and has helped it age. I think definitely with the pacing and stuff of the game has made the game age a lot better for modern fighting game players that maybe want to go back and play some of the classics. And because the turbo speed mode and everything has helped Street Fighter 2 Turbo age a lot better than many other games of the 16-bit era, and specifically of the fourth console generation. And it had many importances that it would put in place for fine games moving forward. Though I will say, I think graphically and everything in mind, I think that is where the importance of Vampire Savior, also known as Darkstalkers 3, goes. I wouldn't really consider it as much as of a 16-bit fighter, as more like towards a 24 slash a 32-bit fighter, because you could tell there is definitely more animation involved in it, which, much like games like, also I would say, games such as X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, also like games such as Street Fighter Alpha 3. But with that said, the importance, though, many standards would be put in place by Turbo, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, for pretty much all games moving forward. However, I want to state the impact I don't think some people realize that with Vampire Savior had, actually. One, Vampire Savior would, I think, really perfect a lot of key mechanics that would be introduced by Vampire, aka Darkstalkers 1, and then improved upon with having more than one special, like super, if you will, in Vampire, or rather Vampire Hunter, aka Night Warriors. And would be perfected, I think at least the super mechanic and everything throughout the Vampire series would be perfected in Vampire Savior, having quite a variety of different types of supers, and definitely great elements in the mechanics, the variety of different choices, especially in Vampire Savior. Also, the 2D art in Vampire Savior cannot be underestimated or, in my opinion, underrated. Vampire Savior, in my opinion, is the gold standard of animation of the 2D genre and 2D era of fighting games, definitely of the 90s. Vampire Savior really paved the way for many future Capcom games. I mean, the animation style, I think a lot of elements of like the supers and the great actual fighting game mechanics and definitely the art direction. And I believe you would see even a lot of 2D games today heavily influenced by games like Dark Stalkers or rather Vampire Savior. Want a good example? I think Vampire Savior was one of the games that really helped pave the way for really the anime fighters or games like the Arc System Works stuff. I believe the Darkstalker series helped pave the way for interesting, unique takes on fighting games, and it partially really helped the, I believe, towards elements that we would see in Darkstalk or in Street Fighter, like the Alpha series. I believe took a lot of influences from actually the Vampire series, as well as many of the crossover games. Took a lot of the like super mechanics and everything that was implemented more so in the Vampire series and perfected by Vampire Savior. For future games, as well as would of course establish arguably one of Capcom's best well-known female game characters of all time with Morrigan, as well as, in my opinion, one of the more underrated characters of Dmitry Maximov, and some great villain designs like Pyron or Lord Jeddah, which finally would get recognized in Marvel Infinite. But with many other things, I think, frankly, the amount of influence in definitely game mechanics, game design, art design, and everything, and definitely some similarities you can see, it would also influence more current day fighters. Like, I would say a perfect example of modern day games, you can definitely see elements of that it took as inspiration from Vampire Savior. I would say look at the Under Nine Birth games from Arc System Works. In my opinion, it is superb and it cannot be denied. And I think more people really need to play Darkstalkers 3 or specifically Vampire Savior if you have the chance. Or if you have a chance, check out the Tower of Chaos, or I believe that's the title, which was released for the Dreamcast and also for the PSP. Or you can get Darkstalker Resurrection on the PS3 while you have the opportunity. Also, you can get digital on the Vita as well. So, you have definitely a variety, but get a chance to get Resurrection just because it also includes online play. But with that said, at the end of the day, even though for a long time Street Fighter would be, I think, basically the mold for many 2D fighters of the 16-bit generation, I actually think at the end of the day, Vampire Savior actually ends up playing more of a role in moving forward among 2D fighters in general fighting games. I think a lot of the elements either starred in Street Fighter, but I think many elements would be perfected in the Vampire series. Like supers would be technically introduced in like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but it would be perfected by Vampire Savior. The supers, the way the super gauge works, the mechanics, a lot of the combo elements, a lot of the especially art style, you can definitely tell that a lot of the art direction stuff of the Vampire games really influenced the Versus series as well as the Alpha games. And I would arguably say, like I mentioned, I think it would also help a lot of the art direction for a lot of Arc System Works stuff, like Guilty Gear, specifically also games like Under Nine Birth, especially because the nighttime more aesthetic and atmosphere, I think definitely at the end of the day, frankly, Vampire Savior has a, I think, heavier influence than, frankly, most games, or rather, most people think, even versus Super, or rather than even Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I actually think at the end of the day, Vampire Savior played a bigger influence as a whole in the 2D fighting game genre in general for the whole thing. Looking just from art style, looking just from game mechanics, the evolution of 2D. I mean, it really did perfect many elements, and I think it still stands as a benchmark, a gold standard for 2D fighting games. But anyways, leave a comment below. What's your opinion? But at the end of the day, I think the game that should move on to the next round, and I think overall influence, is Vampire Savior. But at the same time, I could see most people probably arguing that Street Fighter 2 Turbo is the more important game. Now, I'm not going to argue that, but I think when you look at the whole round picture and stuff and looking for the genre besides Capcom, at the end of the day, Vampire Savior is the more important game. So with that said, you can leave your comment and what your opinions are. Do you agree with the final verdict of Vampire Savior beating Street Fighter 2 Turbo and moving on to round 2 of the tournament, or do you agree? But with that said, I'll see y'all next time, and I'm going to keep it a mystery for match 4. So stay tuned for that next week, but it's going to be an interesting one. But I'll see you soon enough, and hopefully you enjoyed the music in the background. I chose a Vaporwave selection. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel, and stay safe out there in YouTube land.